Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Slow Crafting Podcast. My name's Nadine and I'm coming to you today from the northwest of England near Manchester. This is a bi-weekly podcast about trying to incorporate a slow living and slow fashion agenda into all things crafting, fibre related, so knitting, spinning, sewing, crochet and anything else that takes my fancy. Okay, apologies about the lighting today. I'm having to record this at night because I no longer have a child-free morning to myself anymore, and I decided not to record this afternoon with my little girl running around because she was going through a phase of only wanting to wear swimming costumes, and I didn't think anybody needed to see that, quite frankly. So I've got a light set up in front of me, and it's possibly a bit bright and a bit blowing things out, but we'll manage, we'll get through it. Those of you who watch this regularly will know that my lighting is never optimal. Right, okay, so you may remember last time that I said I was working on my first outfit of the year. Now, for those of you who's watching this for the first time, I've decided to work on making 4 full outfits over the course of the year. And for me, a full outfit is a hand knitted sweater, vest or cardigan, hand sewn dress, hand knitted socks, and a shawl or scarf or cowl, something along those lines. Now, there may be times when I add in another element, like a t-shirt or a hat or gloves or something along those lines, but the main items will be jumper, dress, socks, shawl or cowl. Okay, and now I'm planning on taking about 3 months to complete each full outfit. Apart from this first one, I might have pushed myself a bit with this, because I know I mentioned last time that I was planning on meeting up with some friends last weekend, so I gave myself a month to make my outfit. Now, I had already started 2 bits of it, and the top that I made didn't have sleeves, so that speeded things up, and the sew was a very simple sew. Oh, that reminds me, I've forgotten my pattern piece for the sewing, but I shall get that in a minute. Right, so I mentioned last episode that I didn't think I'd quite get everything finished in time for going and meeting up with my friends, but surprisingly I did. I got everything finished, including the mama lookers, and they were very much needed, because they kept my bum warm in the snowy weather as I was traipsing cross country on trains and buses. So right, you may have noticed at the beginning of the sort of intro to the podcast that I've included a illustration of my outfit for the month. Well, those of you who've not seen it before will have just noticed that there's a drawing at the beginning, but this, I'm going to try and include an illustration of what the outfit should look like, that for each set of outfit, for each outfit set that I'm going to make. So for outfit number 1, oh, it's probably in the wrong place for light. This is what it's going to look like. So we've got a blue knitted waistcoat, a brown dress with pockets, a brown shawl, and hiding at the bottom, blue socks. Now, I showed you the socks last episode because they were finished. They were my hand spun, hand dyed, hand knit textile socks using the Hermione's everyday socks pattern, which I did notice has been like the most popular, the runner-up most popular hand knit on Ravelry this last week. So that was quite interesting. I can see why. They're really easy and quite interesting to do. So and it's a free pattern, and everybody loves a free pattern. But yes, anyway, I've worn the socks, so they're in the wash because they're being hand spun. I didn't want to just put them in the washing machine, so they haven't come back out of the washing basket yet. But you've seen them already, so you don't need to see them again. Right, the waistcoat is here. Excuse me, I've hung it all on a hanger and it looked all nice and pretty, but to show you the bits individually, I'm going to have to take it off the hanger, which means I'm fighting with all the cloths. Ever the professional. But then if you wanted professional, you wouldn't be watching my podcast, would you? Never mind. Here we go. Right. This is the button box waistcoat from nitty.com. I can't remember off the top of my head which issue it was, but I'll put it in the show notes. Neither can I remember the designer, but it's a button box waistcoat from nitty.com. And I knitted it in some James C. Brett Ripple, which is a acrylic wool blend, but slightly more wool than acrylic. And I used some buttons from my stash. I don't know how well you got a bit more. There you go, got little leaves on. They look quite cute. They're sort of a pearlescent bronze colour. And I mentioned last time, because I think last time all I had to do was do the finishing round one of the armholes, and I said I might rip back the collar bind off and do it in a stretchy bind off, which I did, although I'm still not entirely happy with the way the collar sits, because even with blocking it didn't sit permanently in that position. It wants to sort of fold back on itself, and the stretchy bind off I did on it was sort of you knit two and then pass them back over onto your left needle and then knit two together through the back loop, similar like you do on quite a few different shawl patterns. But part of me thinks that might be in a bit of a loose cast off, which is possibly why it's not sitting quite as perfectly as I'd like it to. But it still looks good, and it's warm, and it's got pockets, which is always a bonus. I didn't change the pattern at all. Pattern fits nicely. I made I think it's the 3rd size, and I was expecting it to be a little bit snug, but it's not. After blocking, it fits really nicely. I'm going to have to be careful with this wool though, because I know from knitting my daughter a Milo vest in it when she was born, it does felt easily, because the wool content in it is essentially it's a single ply, but then with a second strand of a poly cotton, like a thread, like the thickness of sewing thread plied with a single, so it's not as robust as a traditionally plied yarn where both plies are the same thickness. So yes, I will probably have to wash this by hand, which there's quite a few things in my wardrobe that my handmade wardrobe that I'm now going to be having to wash by hand. which is good in some respects because it means that I won't be running the washing machine as often, nor will I be running the tumble dryer certainly, and probably using kinder washing products to wash the items in, because I'll be putting my hands in them, and probably not washing them quite as often. But at the same time, it's a little bit awkward for me because it means a bit more effort, but I'm sure it'll be worth it. But yes, anyway, very happy with this pattern, very happy with how this turned out. Lovely and warm and comfortable. Only a slight niggle about the collar, which if it bugs me that much, I will probably just sew the collar down. I'll tack it down in a few places so it sits in the same place all the time. But other than that, very happy. Now, I mentioned, wobbling the camera, the mama lookers. These are a pattern by Maya Carlson from the Yabo website. When you first go on it, it is in Swedish, but it does give you the option of an English translation, along with a couple of other languages, I think. Now, these are some woolly knickers, essentially, the sort of woolly shorts, designed to be worn over tights and over your proper knickers. I've had to clarify this a few times because I've mentioned, well, when I mentioned to my other half, and then when I mentioned to a few friends that I was knitting woolly knickers, they did think that I was knitting actual knickers for wearing straight on top of my bottom, and they looked at me in absolute horror. But once I explained that they were just over shorts to go under dresses and over tights when it was cold, they seemed to accept them a bit more readily. But I didn't think I was going to get these finished, but I did, and I'm very, very happy with them. Now, I cast on a considerable number of extra stitches because I think it's a free pattern. I think you're supposed to cast on about 160 or something daft on 2.5mm needles, and I really couldn't envisage that going round my waist or my hips or even my thigh, to be honest. Because I'm just like, no, I can't see that working. So I cast on about 240, I think, and I didn't need to. When I put them on, they weren't baggy enough to fall down, but I could stretch them out and pretend I was doing Slimming World adverts. Probably Weight Watchers actually, with the stretchy trousers. But no, so I think next time I make a pair of these, and I do want to make another pair, I'll cast on fewer stitches around the waist, because I cast on more stitches around this ribbon for the waist, but then the hip measurements for the original pattern were fine, so I just didn't increase as rapidly once I got past the ribbon, and I just worked the rest of the pattern as given. Now, I did lose the will to live a bit with this 8 inches of ribbon, but it was worth it in the end, so I just need to battle through it for the next pair, I think. And I love how this pattern worked out. This wool is Orcania Ranco. I can't remember what the colourway is because I've lost the yarn band, because there were leftovers from knitting some socks for my sister-in-law, and then I had an extra skein, so there's less than 1.5 skeins used to knit these knicker shorts. I know that the pattern itself does tell you, I think it tells you need about 800 metres, and you don't need anywhere near that much, because these were both 400 metre skeins and I used less than 600 metres for the knickers. I'm not sure I could have got away with it out of one skein, but you don't need to break into your second one that much, I don't think. Now, you do short row shaping on the back. Oh, just let me get these to balance out properly. You do short row shaping on the back to give you bum room, and I thought, given the nature of this wool, that it might do some weird pooling around the curve of my bottom, but it doesn't. You can't really see any interruption to the pooling pattern that's established, so that was really good. Now, the legs look a bit frilly. They're not meant to in the pattern. These have been stretched around my thighs once, so that's possibly why they're looking a bit frilly. But also, because I do have quite meaty thighs, I wasn't convinced that the openings would necessarily fit over my thighs with just traditional bind off around the edge of the ribbon. So I did a stretchy bind off for that as well, which is why it's sort of flared and frilled a bit. But I think I could have got away with that actually. If I'd have just cast off in rib, I think I could have got away with a normal cast off, and that would have been fine. So yes, Maya's Mama Lookers 2.0, definitely a big thumbs up from me, and I will be knitting another pair because so warm, but not so warm that they were sweaty, which is always a worry. But no, I was out in the snow on public transport, and yes, they were warm, and I was comfortably warm. I didn't feel like I was overly dressed and wearing 1,000,001 layers, but nor did I get any chilly breezes up my dress, so that was very good. Right, so that's those. One more knitting, and that's my shawl. I really like my shawl. Now, I'll have either included, I'll probably include works in progress photos at the beginning in the introduction, but then I will also include some finished object pictures at the end of the episode. I'm not good enough with technology to insert them mid my waffle, so if you get pictures, you either get them at the beginning or at the end, or both, not in the middle. But this shawl is it's an elongated triangle, which means that I increased at the sides on every row, but only the centre every other row, which is why I ended up with an elongated triangle. And it's massive, and it's lovely. I basically just went with garter stitch for the main body, and then a few sections of old shale pattern at the edge, and then an I-cord bind off. Now I made the shawl up as I went along, and I did really make it up as I went along, because I knew I wanted the garter stitch and then a few bands of old shale, but I added in a few stripes here and there just to, when I got bored of knitting one colour, chucked in a few stripes and ended up doing the I-cord bind off because it just felt a bit unfinished if I'd have just cast off where the last old shale pattern was. So here it is. Oh, there we go. It's quite big, like I say. I was using a lot of leftovers. This dark wool here is actually a chocolate brown colour, a very dark chocolate brown colour. It doesn't look as black as it does on here. It was leftover from knitting a cardigan that I made last year, and it was just an unlabelled skein from my local wool shop. They do machine knits, ready-made machine knits, and I think it was maybe some leftovers from their process for that. So unfortunately I can't tell you what that was with. This sort of camel colour here is a 4-ply from Woolly Knits, which is my local yarn shop, which is just up the road from where I live. It's not their signature 4-ply, but it is the 4-ply that they have spun for their shop. It's not called signature 4-ply, it might just be called 4-ply. And it's a superwash merino, but that again was left over from doing the same cardigan. So I can wear this with the cardigan because the blue that's down here, which is actually a Drops Fable Unicolor, was left over from the cardigan that I made last year. So I was thinking of mixing matching on my wardrobe. Will go well together. But yes, so we've got unlabelled random 4-ply from Woolly Knits. This brown variegated here is leftovers from knitting my other half socks, and it was a King Cole zigzag sock wool, I think. This sort of mid brown here is some vintage wool that my friend's mum gave me ages ago, and it was left over from crocheting a blanket for my oldest when she was born, because I did that in this sort of mid brown and a lime green colour. It just made me think of chocolate limes. It was lovely. And then back to the dark brown colour again. So yes, unfortunately I haven't got a pattern to direct you towards for this one, but there are plenty of triangular shawls with old shale edging out there on Ravelry. If I try and remember, I'll look for some that are similar and put links to them down below. But yes, I very much like this. It's very snuggly and warm. In fact, because I love this shawl so much, when I was out and about in the snow, I was walking around with my coat unfastened, partly to show my shawl off to anyone who was passing, in the hope that they'd go, "Ooh, have you knitted that?" And I could go, yes, I have. But nobody did. So sad. But also because it was nice and warm. I didn't need to have my coat fastened up against the cold, because double woolly goodness kept me nice and warm. So that's this shawl done for this time. I'm just going to move a couple of bits so I can get room for my dress. I'll also I'm hoping I didn't just do a massively unflattering shot there. I'm guessing I'll find out when I'm editing it, but as I don't do chopping out of bits, you might have to live with whatever hideous sight you had as I was reaching to get my bag then. Right, now for the sewing. I sewed this, it's an apron pattern, strictly speaking, from Simplicity. It's a Dotty Angel one. It's Simplicity 8230, and I did View A, which has got 2 pockets, and it has oh, you're not going to really be able to see, I might have to undo it. Basically it has wide side panels that you can either fasten behind you or fold over and fasten at the front, and that hides the pockets if you do that. Now I've just been sat with this scrunched up on my knee, so it's not going to look its best. I'll show you what it looks like. This is it with the sides undone. As you can see, it has got wide extra panels. Just let me, didn't plan this very well, did I? There we go, that's fastened. So there we go, that's what it looks like. I'll give you a closer view of the pockets. So there's a different colour top band to the main body of the pockets, and there are some pleats at the top and the bottom of the pocket. Now when I sewed the pockets on, one of them is slightly wonky, but when you're wearing it you can't really tell. I can only tell when I'm actually looking at it, and I don't think that this fabric was sturdy enough to make the pockets, because they do look very crumpled and scrumpled, and you can't, the pleats aren't as precise as they were perhaps envisaged to be. I'll show you the back where it fastens. Tie at the back. There you go. So there was there was plenty of room for eating all the cake that I ate when I met up with my friends. Just loosen it off a bit if I needed to, but I didn't need to, so that was good. Now I made the brown fabric was an old sheet because I thought, this is the first time I've made this. I didn't want to go out and buy extra fabric at the so soon after Christmas, because quite frankly I couldn't afford it. So I just used what I had in stash, which was basically a big piece of brown fabric that was a sheet. Incidentally, it's actually what I've used for the binding on this quilt wall hanging behind me, and actually the backing on there is this fabric that's in the pockets. I will make use of all fabric that I have for many, many jobs. So yes, but it's worked out quite well, and it's not, I know it's a bit crumpled because it's been sat on my knee, but it's not as crumpled as I thought it was going to be, which probably means that this sheet is a polycotton rather than a cotton, which isn't ideal. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that for now. Obviously, in the future, I will try and make things with more natural materials, but for now, because this was already in my stash, I'm happy to use this. There's bias binding. I don't know if you're going to be able to see. Oh no, you might. Oh yeah, you can. You can see it's got flowers on and little pretty delicate things. It's not just a plain cream bias binding. There's pink and tiny little blue flowers all around it, and there's bias binding round the neck opening and round the arm openings. Now, my bias binding, I do end up sewing on by hand every time. So I initially sew it on by hand and then fold it over and then sew it down by hand as well. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Yeah, you see my tiny little stitches there. So the stitches on this side aren't as in. I was going to say they aren't as invisible, but they wouldn't really be invisible if you're doing it on the sewing machine. You'd have a line of stitches, but they just look different to if you'd have sewn it by machine. And I don't think you're even going to be able to pick this up on the computer, but from the outside it's just a series of tiny, oh no, you're not going to be able to, not in this light anyway, so a series of tiny little pinpricks along about 1.5 centimetres from the edge, so you don't get an obvious line from the outside. It's just very subtle. And then the hem, hand stitched the hem as well. So I did a herringbone stitch just all round. Oh, I don't know. Oh, you might not be able to get that, but yeah, herringbone stitch all around the edge. And again, you just get a tiny little pinprick size stitch on the outside of your garment. So yeah, I mean, part of the reason that I end up doing a lot of hand stitching on my sewn garments It's just because I'm not technologically proficient with a sewing machine. I can get it to do straight lines and occasionally round a corner, but anything fancy or that requires me to pay attention to very, very strict seam allowances or have a perfectly straight line with no wibbles and what have you, it's not going to happen really. Normally because I'm trying to do it with a small child whittering up in my ear, so my concentration levels aren't what they should be. But another reason is that I just really enjoy hand sewing. I think because when I first started sewing, I didn't have access to a sewing machine, so I did all my dressmaking basically by hand. I did all my stitching on all my outfits by hand. So it seems to be just be my default nowadays. And it's a lot easier for me to fit in around my other commitments if I can just sit down and get a needle and some thread out and just like sewing these ties for at the back. They're sewn up by hand down the edge. Now it's a lot easier to just sit with the children doing that by hand after I'd sort of ironed them and pressed them than it would have been to distract the children long enough to get the sewing machine out to then sew them and do it well and neatly, and then put the sewing machine away and distract the children again while I clean everything up. So yes, and when I've got the sewing machine out, the girls want to have a look, and I suspect they also want to have a go and are prone to putting their hands up and near where the needle is. So yes, we save getting the sewing machine out for when I've got big long side seams to do, and I can just go zoop zoop, done, and put it away. And I'll usually do that on a night time, so I don't want to be doing anything complicated, but everything else I end up doing by hand. But yes, I'm very happy with this Dotty Angel dress as well. I did sew up the side seams. Now these were supposed to be left open and just hemmed, because like I say, it's meant to be an apron rather than a dress, but I wanted to wear it just over tights. I didn't want to have to wear it over trousers, so I sewed up the side seams, so if it does flap about, it's not going to come open and show you big woolly knickers to everybody. So that's that. For the pattern itself, it was quite straightforward. The instructions are quite scant, but I wasn't left confused about anything particularly. I think there was something that could have been clearer, but I can't remember what it was now. And I have a feeling it was possibly around sewing the pockets on, or sewing the pockets. So yeah, sewing the pockets. I think that there was some confusion around that bit. Confusion on my part. But no, the rest of it was straightforward. For somebody of my sewing level, which is not an entire novice, but then not an accomplished seamstress either, sort of somewhere in the middle, towards the, no, I'm not going to say towards the beginner end, because I've sewn lots of things and I've made stuff myself without, self-drafted things as well, but yeah, I think I've done them more by luck and just having a go rather than by any particular technical skill or ability. Yeah, so that's my first outfit for this year, completed and done, and I'm very, very happy with it. And I have to say, when I wore it to go out to meet my friends on Saturday, I couldn't have been happier. Now, partly that was because I was meeting my friends, but I'd very rarely go out without my children. In fact, this was only the second time I'd been out for the day without my children since they were born. The first time was exactly a year ago when I went up to meet with my friends last time. And the first time I went, I just was an emotional mess pretty much all day, because I was more than an hour away from my children. Like in terms of distance, I had travelled more than an hour away from my children, and I was away for most of the day, which was just a little bit traumatic for me. But this time was a lot easier. Not just because I'd done it once before, but because I think it did have a lot to do with wearing my handmade clothes, actually, because I felt very comfortable and very me, and because I was so comfortable and so happy in what it just quite sounds a bit shallow, but in what I was wearing, but it was more that my handmaids were being my emotional comfort blanket, if that makes sense, for when I was out without the children. So that made it a lot easier to cope with. The children were fine with that. They had a marvellous day with their dad, and were going to the cinema and out for meals and having a whale of a time in their own little adventure. But no, having hand knits and handmade clothes surrounding me made me happy and made me feel comfortable. So yes, I enjoyed wearing my clothes, and I'm certainly going to get a lot of wear out of all of them. But yes, so next time I speak to you, I won't have started my second outfit yet. I think next time I'm going to speak to you about I'm going to do some book reviews, because I got some books for Christmas that I want to do a review of before I start on my second outfit, because I've got a few other things that I've got to be doing this month which don't form part of the big 4 outfits, so I shall get that done. Yeah, so next time I'll do the book review for the 3 books that I got for Christmas. So they will be the slow knitting book, the alternate stranded colourwork stitch dictionary, and Japanese stitch dictionary as well. So hopefully you'll come back and join me for those, and then possibly the episode after I will start my second outfit if I've finished everything else I need to do. But if not, I might just talk you through my plans for the second outfit. Right, so thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a long one, and I have a very white forehead because of the light, but I was going to say hopefully I'll be recording in daylight next time, but given the hectic schedule at my house, I probably will be forced to record with weird lighting next time as well. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hopefully you've enjoyed what I had to say, and feel free to get in touch with me through the comments below, or through Ravelry, where you can find me as Crafty Nadine, or through my blog, which is themanyknitsofnading.wordpress.uk.com. Yeah, .wordpress. I'll put the details in the bottom and at the end on probably on a separate screen at the end. Anyway, I'm waffling. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.